Hi, welcome back to Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Robb and we are on location in Penticton with Harley Pyrozyk. Harley is one of the long-time running musicians of the Okanagan music scene, and I'm really excited to sit down with him. How you doing?
Doing good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for being in, doing this and being a part of this. This is awesome.
I'm really excited. So why don't you start off by telling basically who you are and how you got into music?
My name is Harley, or go by Carl's on the drums is kind of the stage name as it's kind of been over time now. And started music when I was about 13 or so, a teenager age, and it was just a drive to get into music. There wasn't like a particular calling, but the music was definitely the drums that called to me. So I was just, wanted to explore that option, and thankfully I had parents that would, happy to have a drum kit as for a 13-year-old to bang on and be probably pretty obnoxious in those early days. But so started with that. I was fortunate to be part of essentially like a lesson group with a very infamous drummer, Steve McVie. And he, essentially kind of like took a good bunch of drummers, I would say like a good handful of about a dozen or so that he kind of gave lessons to and kind of gave and taught his knowledge as he was, he didn't actually perform in any particular band. He was just really known for his pipe band knowing, but just the ability just to play any music. And so got lessons from him for a good 5 or so years as growing up, to 13 or 4 or 5 years into that high school age. So, just kind of got the basics of the drums at that point. But, there's basics of drums, and then there's making music with like-minded people. So first kind of experience was actually my friend right here that's interviewing me with Robb O'Day. A lot of my roots here was founded here with you yourself. So started kind of messing around in my basement actually, and remember a few original songs that we made, and if I can remember some of those titles of like Up There and Showdown and some of these other songs that I would love to be able to hear now. But unfortunately, there's no recordings in 2003. It's kind of hard to record any of that. But so that was just kind of messing around. Not really even had a band name. I don't know. We were just waffling on so many ideas, but it was never. I think we did one show at Voodoo's, which Voodoo's was an integral part of the Penticton music scene.
Yeah.
Which we can kind of get into more of that, but so started with that, but that led into the Pasties, and that was kind of the first actual band, and it was starts me, you, JP Babbage, and then we had the Fred Smith and Ewan Calvert as well. So it was a 5-piece to start with, and did quite a few shows around the Okanagan, again in the small scene, nothing too many venues, just like Voodoo's and maybe Fibonacci's, can't even remember that at that point. But
Grateful Fed.
As the 5-piece.
The Kelowna Club, we did a show.
We definitely became solid when we became a 3-piece, and there wasn't much after. We were a 5-piece for a very short amount of time, and then we became me, you, and JP Babbage, which was then like really for a good amount of years, 4 or 5 years. So I think leading up to about 2010-ish, so I would say about 2006 to 2010 was probably our kind of time where we were doing music, like I said, like in Kelowna, the Grateful Fed, and multiple venues in Penticton with Voodoo's. We did like a little festival, Gyro Park, if I remember. It was really fun. It was definitely the moments that kind of like formed my musician, like all those influences coming in and just starting to shape into a sound that we could kind of call our own and something unique. So that was my essentials of music at that point. And that was kind of the first foundation of music. And then it kind of unfortunately had a big lull for many point in my 20s of not having music in my life until it kind of came back to me in about 2019.
With the Flannel Contract, I believe.
Yeah, so it really started with the cover band, actually, the ADDs. So good.
Okay.
Yeah, so some friends of ours. This would be Brody and and then also Cam, some good friends, just that were buddies of ours, and we've always said, oh, we should jam, we should make music. You know, a lot of it is just talk, but it was New Year's Eve of going into 2020 before everything hit the fan. It was like 2019, golden time, right? And remember us, it was, we actually had my djembe, my good old hand drum that has been around forever. And we actually just kind of did a good 3-piece jam with just the 3 of us. And we're like, all right, we can do this, we can make this happen. So it was kind of from that point, we actually kind of brought my old blew the dust off the drums from from that time. Because now we're going like this, 2019. I hadn't played music since, like 2010, 2011. Few kind of musings of music here and there, but it was very loose. Yeah, so it was getting back into the music. That was like, it was a huge calling to get back in. There was a void for sure that I felt. So even if it was just kind of a very laissez-faire kind of jam, we weren't making originals with the ADDs, but there was a huge calling to get back, and I'm very, very happy I did. And still to this day, we still do with the ADDs. It's not my main project, for sure, as you've just kind of mentioned. My main project is the Flannel Contract. So the Flannel Contract, as I still do the ADDs, and we're essentially a cover band, and a couple originals, but we actually haven't performed those in years. We just do covers, which I can kind of, shelf and kind of get back to those covers. But just going back to the Flannel Contract, it's that started for me in 2021. So the pandemic had kind of happened already for a good, already a few months of that in a year. Not even a year, I guess, at this point. But the main reason how I got into that band was that my partner, Kat, she worked with Kynan at the Bench Market. She's a barista, and he was working in the kitchen there. And their drummer at the time, he had gone to Vancouver to do some schooling there, and they were kind of left without a drummer. And there was always kind of this idea that he was going to return into the band and do that. So there was just kind of this like temporary thing. I was like, Kat's like, these guys great. Like, I'm sure you'd get along. I was like, yeah, why not? So I just went to this jam phase. Hadn't even really known these guys yet, but it instantly clicked that I'm like, oh yeah, I know these guys. Like, we're like-minded. They're. So started practicing with them in that, like 2021. And then like kind of learned their songs. At this point, they had about 8 original songs or so, less than a dozen for sure. And yeah, learned those songs, and then we performed a couple shows. So we did one at Slackwater Brewing. And so this was kind of when everything opened back up again. There was that little window of that time before everything closed again. So in that little window, we did a couple shows. I think it was one at Slackwater, and one maybe it was Clancy's at the time. I have to kind of remember that, it's going back some years. But we did a couple shows, and yeah, I just knew that this was like for sure my main call. As much as I love the ADDs, like this, there's something more special when you're performing original music and you're just kind of putting your heart and soul a little bit more into it when it is your own, and it's your own little baby essentially. And yeah, like having both bands, sometimes even a third band depending, but with both bands it is a lot between trying to fit in the practices, trying to do shows, and that. The third band that I've kind of done as well is with my brother-in-law Will Schlackel, who is a very infamous musician in Penticton. He's been around for at least in the music scene in Penticton for well over 20 years or so, but his whole life he's been a musician and very respected. Few bands. So yeah, being a brother-in-law musician, we've done a few shows. We performed under the band Bad Apple. When you add in the third to the band, you gotta, it's a lot of music in their life at that point, but that's okay. I love it. So yeah,
it's definitely hard to juggle it all with even one band, but to have multiple bands, it's not easy.
It's not easy, yeah, but it is worth it. The nice thing of those other 2 bands, like the cover bands, they are so back burner too for the main part, because those members all have kids now. We're at the point of our lives where that's a huge part, and which is awesome. It's great, but it does make it harder time for music, and family always does come first. So for that band, we did a show just a couple weeks ago at the Gun Barrel up at Apex, which is
nice.
a very great venue up there, which is fun. But we don't have anything booked, I think, until the summer again, which is nice. So we don't only do about like 3 or 4 shows a year,
Okay.
and a lot of them are like weddings and those kind of shows too. So it's nice to balance it when it is such a, if I was as active as I am with the Flannel Contract, we were practicing every week, we're doing a show once or twice a month. If I had that same amount of level, then you're definitely hard to balance. But I can make it work with that and still have a day job and still have a life and still do everything else. So
Have you even seen a difference from what you've been taught into what the industry is now? Because you were taught from the industry standard that was what everybody was used
So
to.
it was a degree at Capilano University for Arts and Entertainment Management that I got back in 2011, I believe. I graduated with that. And like it was very useful to know like how the industry, a lot of the ins and outs, like especially about like SOCAN rights and a lot of things that still haven't changed to this day, like a lot of the background legalese of music and how a lot of those rights work and stuff. It can be confusing. That's still kind of set today, even in a digital world. But there's so much that is completely irrelevant, and they even kind of knew that. At least there were some teachers that kind of had a little bit knowing at 2010 and 11 that there was kind of a change on the horizon with the rise of the internet. But it's some of the information in terms of how to book shows, how to get like a record deal and all those kind of things is definitely not in the ways where it's totally a social media platform and today. It's interesting to see what the course would be now and seeing how they've adapted it, because I would assume they would have to in today's world. So I do think it was useful at the time and still using like a lot of management practices, but exactly in hindsight, like could all this stuff be learned without having a degree? Probably, right? So
Fair.
like I don't know if it really truly was worth it, but it's definitely not like a regret, and it's great to still experience and go through that process of school and all that as well too. But it's definitely changed from what I learned of that, and some of it's I completely forgot because it just wasn't really applied, right? You learned it, and then we were on this change of into this world, so be like, oh great, I have this information, and then I never even got to apply it because by 2012 2013 we already saw such a change that now if I try to even think back on some of the information I graduated like more than 15 years ago, it's like, what did I even learn again too? Like, how did I apply that? Like, it's changed so much on such a framework from what it is now, right? So
it's funny because that led to you managing around 9 artists and booking shows and being the graphic designer for the record label that we worked on together.
Correct. Yes. Though that was a huge part of the music too. As much as I wasn't performing and as a musician at that point, and let's say we did that for as Mad Melody from
I believe.
2012 to about 2014ish, something around there. And I'd use that management to kind of create what we called a record label, which was almost more of like a like
family.
A family, but more of like a promotion company, more is kind of what it was, promotion, production company. We tried to encompass it all, which was really cool. I think we did take a great undertaking. I think the greatest achievement that we did was in the hip hop scene, because we worked, you said, mentioned, a family of eight or 9 different artists, which were mainly hip hop artists. We did have a couple bands that we worked with, but really showcasing the hip hop music scene, which like I really learned a lot from. That wasn't my first calling. Like, of course, in the early 2000s, there was such a influence of hip hop and music, but it wasn't my main kind of driver of music too. But once I got into that in 2012, because you were so involved with it, I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. This is like, this is a whole artist avenue that I just didn't really recognize and fully really kind of give credit at the time until that moment, until 2012, and I was like, oh man, this is like amazing. Like the story that you'd be able to tell and behind these really awesome beats, and I thought it was a really cool and really opened up my eyes. So I was so stoked to promote you guys and really try to book shows. You said graphic design, so I was like, really using like poster design, and you were definitely the backbone of the production, but that definitely came with like a whole art and the whole branding that we were definitely creating. It was really cool. I was really, really proud of what we did.
What up to this day has been your biggest challenge musically?
Biggest challenge musically, like, I guess for just getting the inspiration to get back into it too, what was a lot, like I felt like I was making excuses for a long time, talking about, oh, I can't find a place to jam, or oh, I don't have the time, or to that. So to really commit and to finally get back in from that void from like 2012 to 2019, a good 5-6 years where there was no me not even doing any production of music or any of the promotion side or any performing. So it kind of felt like a challenge to finally like pull the trigger to like get back into it, to like, let's form a band with these ADD guys and like let's just get the ball going, and like, so, and I'm so happy I did, because it's been, you don't realize how much of a hole it is until it's gone. So that's definitely a challenge in terms of like, getting it to where I am now. But now that's not necessarily a challenge for me in today. Like in terms of actual like me sitting on the drums and the challenges that present to me on that side, like as a drummer, we're always meant to keep the time and keep the beat, always that. So there is a part of me that wants to sometimes change my tempo, change my speed. So that's always a challenge for me to work on in self, of like making sure that I'm keeping that tempo, keeping that metronome, keeping that, because, that is such a critical part. And I know that I can tend to maybe a little speed up at times and slow down. So just as an ongoing, just, making sure that I can be the best drummer that I can be is being aware of that. And sometimes maybe it's maybe more of an obstacle than a challenge, but I feel like I can conquer that. So yeah, other challenges, I guess, just present themselves into just social media, of just trying to be better at that in terms of the band, trying to like be the business side of the band can just be the challenges there, which admittedly I feel like I can always do better on in terms of that, especially the social media. When that one's tough for me to really like, create the content, and I know that's where it has to be, as we just kind of touched on that earlier. But I don't know, to have the witty content, it doesn't have to be witty, but just original, something that people want to watch, something that feels engaging enough. That's the challenge, and that is a challenge. And I know that is something that's really important though to do, and so it's wrestling with that and be like, I gotta make sure I'm better at this, but at the same time, how do I be better at this? What what I mean? So so the promoting, the self-promotion of yourself, but also your music, and that is definitely a challenge that I think I could do better at.
I think every band challenge is social media, honestly, because we've touched on it before, but like, we're not made to make content. We're made to make music.
No.
So like, you already put so much energy into making the music and getting it recorded and ready to be presented, and then you have to think of, oh, okay, well, I've also got to be creating content that's viral enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the Flannel Contract, you guys have done a lot for the community in Penticton. You guys not only host a lot of the shows with Chris and with other groups and stuff, but how have you seen the Penticton scene change from when we were playing with the Pasties to now you playing with the Flannel?
Right. Yeah. Like, so you mentioned like our work there. Yeah, we do lots of fundraiser work, and we'll pretty much do any fundraiser for, as long as it's a good cause, for Penticton, just because we think that's such an important thing to do for the community, is to spread what you can give, and we can give music. So we're always happy to do that. But you said that the change, like, yeah, it's totally this ebb and flow of where the music scene has gone. So we were performing as the Pasties in 2007, 8, kind of in the peak of it. There was a lot of bands that were in the scene. Like, we were played with DFY and Hardball and Times of Madness and Hanio and Oh man, there was so many bands that still exist in some form with those musicians, but there was a big collective of musicians at the time, all really, I feel like, supporting one another, helping to do shows. There was definitely a very, not a lot of ego in the scene at that time. I felt like we were all just trying to better ourselves, or all trying to better the scene by bettering every band, which was awesome. Like, right, we'd drop on the show, do this, jamming together, collective, you know, jams, like on stage, even performing live. So there was this huge community vibes that existed in that time. And then it definitely was this tapering off, and I think it was a lot of the music scene of the musicians that were around at that time moving off, going to other places. In your young 20s, you're kind of really exploring yourself. You kind of move away. So I don't know if that was kind of a lot of us leaders of the music scene kind of just fell away. We weren't really as grouped together as much anymore, and that might have kind of contributed to the little bit of the downfall of the scene. But I think at the time, it was the rise of electronic music. As we were kind of touched, we were doing the hip hop scene in about 2012. It kind of transitioned to a very like produced electronic kind of music. The scene, dubstep was just coming out. It was this huge, like, massive kind of new music, and that it's like, if you were to define that generation, I'd say from 2010 to 2020, that decade of music, because we like to break them into decades, that decade was just electronic hip hop decade. Like, that was the time. So I think we had this whole just cultural downfall, being like, I'm not really into people with a guitar and drums and singing as much. Like, I want to see someone with a DJ. I want to see someone with like a hip hop mic, right? So I think there was that scene. I think our leaders kind of weren't necessarily there. So it was not necessarily a vibrant music scene for a lot of that, mid 2000, like 2012 to 15, 16. It was a pretty lull of a music scene. Not to say that it wasn't, but it was tough for a lot of musicians. And then it was like, I wasn't performing music, and there was this void in my life. So I think I called to a lot of people. I don't think I was the only one. So that's when we saw musicians starting to come back together again, like these old bands like Hardball, and these musicians that were iconic, Rob McLaren, all these guys, like, all really starting to get really back into the scene. I think maybe that was something possibly just playing armchair psychology, but is that we all kind of had a calling for it, all in a similar kind of time. So we all just kind of got back into the music, and the music scene was changing again. Like, we were going into more of a strip back, more of this folk kind of pop music was kind of taking a little bit more of a, that electronic was taking a bit of a back step in that time. And then I think, so the music was coming up. It was coming up again. And then COVID, and then that's like kind of 2019, 2020, a very big marker in time. Mm-hmm. As it was kind of people getting more interested in back again, it cut off suddenly, and then it was taken from everybody. And that was, obviously it's a huge moment for all musicians. We can all look back at that and being like, what the heck was going on, right? Like, none of us could perform, none of us could play. So then a little bit of a blessing, I think, because once we could come back, people realized, being like, oh my God, I need music, whether I need to go see it and perform it, or I need music, I need to play it, I need to be a part of it. So it was a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of us, of just like, we can't let music die. So to see where the music scene is now, since from 2022 and onwards and stuff, as we're in 25 now, it's some of the most vibrant I've seen it ever right now. Like, there's so many bands coming onto the scene, all different genres. We got rock bands, we got like bluegrass bands, we got metal bands, we got like such a vibrant scene. And again, I'd like to think, but I don't feel like there's a lot of ego also in our music scene. I think we're very supportive. I think all of us, whether you are in the metal band or the metal scene, or just a singer-songwriter with acoustic guitar, there's a lot of unity right now, and being like, yeah, you're doing music, you're building the scene up. So I feel like we are on definitely this upward again, even more of an upward from when I first started. So I think, and I love to see that. It's amazing. So I think we're on a more of a high in music right now, and I think it took a crazy global pandemic to realize that we need music in our lives, and I hope it's here to stay for this next while. But it is one of these things. The music scene is kind of always built into these chunks, and it's so hard to predict what will happen by 2030, and like what will the music scene be in the next, like, you know, when we're into a new kind of chunk time of time, and hopefully it'll be as vibrant, and that, you know, time will tell. I think countries can push more to just pushing the arts more over the front, and you'll get results. And I think, you know, I don't know if North America does that enough. So
CBC does. It has.
They do.
I can't remember which one it is. One of the shows, but one of the shows when I used to do construction, we used to listen to it all the time. And my favorite thing was they would bring on Aboriginal artists, from DJs to singers and hip hop artists, and there's a lot of really cool art that's not really broadcasted. That's Canadian.
Yeah, CBC is amazing. They're so great, and so I'm kind of a little fearful for a new government, if we do get a conservative government, you know, if that would still get funded and still have those problems. So, you know, it's something to keep like an eye on, because I know, like, Polyev has said some pretty bad things about the CBC, and you're like, well, I don't know, like, yeah, maybe there's some show, like maybe some of the news programs, or maybe maybe they just skew liberal, that, but like to axe the whole thing, like I said, what they do for musicians and artists and art and culture, it would be like disgusting. It would be horrible to Canadians. So that does concern me, and I hope there would be enough of us Canadians to be like, don't like ever touch any of these arts funding. If not, let's put more into it. So. Yeah, I guess.
I think that's one thing that does lack in Canada is funding for the arts.
For sure it does.
We have so many amazing artists that struggle to even get seen because our country is so big with such a tiny population. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, California has more people than our entire country. So it's kind of it's so far spread that it makes it very difficult for especially musicians to get heard, B, get seen, and then C, travel across the country.
Right.
That's the hardest, is because you want to be playing.
Massive country too, as you're traveling huge distances between to like go to this tour to make it. It's tough. We definitely are faced against it.
There's a lot of wicked programs.
I still think we're doing good though. Like I said, the music scene is at its highest point in terms of the local scene. You know, we're supportive, so I have hopes for it right now, and I don't want to ever get pessimistic on the scene. But you know, it obviously could be better. It could be better at everything we do in life. But you know, it is. I'm happy to see where our local scene is. I'd like to see the global or the Canadian scene kind of all match up that. But you know, we can only do what we can do.
Yeah, our local scene is very unique, and I think it's because if you were to look at the Okanagan as its own little island offset, it's not on the main highway for Canada, which is probably why a lot of artists don't really come through here, because it's not along the main highway. But
I think that's changing, like in terms of just the population, in terms of everything, and like it is becoming more of a center. So I can see,
especially the south of like the Okanagan Event Center.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And just, you know, allowing more venues, that's always been an issue too. So I really hoping to see some more come to light. That medium-sized venue, that's what, like, it's such a huge lack, I think, in the scene. We have so many great bars that will, you know, will host music and do that, but they only have a capacity of only that, like, few hundred, a few hundred at most, and that's tough. And then you got that venue, and then you got the event center and the stadiums and the hockey arena. So it's like we need that middle one, so musicians that are in that middle phase in their career can come here more easily, and, you know, not just make it more viable so they can sell tickets, have a venue that's appropriately sized, but not too big, right? And I feel like we're definitely lacking that within the Okanagan, is that kind of middle bar. So that's what I'm really hoping up can kind of fill that void, so we can get that medium artist, so musicians can open up for them. And
I think it'd be cool to see the Cleveland open up for local shows.
Cleveland's tough though, because it's a seated venue.
I know.
Yeah, so I would ideally like to see something that has like a good floor and like some sort of like almost like a
Bare Bones.
Yeah, kind of like that. I would like almost like a Commodore would be like, oh, that would be perfect. Like still has a bar, still has like enough, but like big. Like,
I mean,
that's
for
why
all
I
ages,
think
sorry.
that's why the Mule, the old the Blue Mule nightclub in Penticton that turned into Slackwater for a good amount of time, Slackwater Brewing, and then so when they took the venue over, they kind of have their big. That venue was set up to be a nightclub. There was like a dance floor in the middle, and then an upper deck where you could all kind of watch down in that. So there were some great DJ shows that kind of came to that venue, that medium-sized venue with about 500 capacity. So when the brewer took it over, they put like big tanks like right in the middle, which is cool. Like, they had to brew
brewery.
somewhere, and it was more of like a brewery, a small little bar tasting kind of area. But that, they have left now that venue. So I'm just like, come on, please get someone in there, turn it back into a music venue. Turn it like, go, because it's set up. The tanks take them back out again, turn that back into like it's there. It's like a very potential venue. So I'm like, it's open right now. I don't know what's happening to that venue. So I'm like, oh please, the music gods, turn that into that good medium-sized venue, because that's what the Okanagan needs big time.
It does. I think also embracing all ages venues would be a nice thing.
Yeah.
So that's where like Cleveland opening up for that, or there's an amazing theater in Lake Country out in Kelowna that has a wicked setup, and it's like attached to the school. So like if you could incorporate doing the shows and bringing in new clients, and by clients I mean like a younger crowd, and inspiring them to, a lot of them probably like music, they just don't know how to get into performing. We had the opportunity of getting to meet the elders of the scene who taught us the ropes, and we ran with it, and I think they don't have that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. Because so many of the bars, so many of that
like even if you are good enough to play in a bar, you're not allowed to stay in the bar.
100%, exactly.
Right? Like,
oh, yeah, definitely.
You have to sit outside until you
exactly.
perform, then you got to leave. And
it's so wild.
It is really, I think it's a really weird thing, because like wanting to inspire, have a thriving art scene isn't based on the current artists that you have. A thriving art scene is a continuous breed of artists that are going to flourish, not a select few. So it's really hard when you have like no really options within the Okanagan for like people who aren't established to get established, because like you have to work so hard to get to a winery if you're a singer and songwriter. You can't just apply, right? You have to have a reputation, or they're not even going to look at you.
Oh yeah.
How do you build that reputation if you're just starting out?
That's it.
Right.
That's always that trick. So, yeah, I think it's just giving those opportunities, right? Like I think they just have to be willing to just go on a limb a little bit too on some of these people, because you might just be totally surprised. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. That's tough.
If you had one piece of advice that you would give musicians, upcoming musicians, what would it be?
Never give up on it. Just always just keep it in the back burner. Don't ever just be like, oh, I used to drum, I used to play guitar. It's and just always keep up with it. Like you don't realize how much of a void in your life that you have until you don't have music there. And it might not, maybe if you're not a performer and maybe you just, you don't feel like you could do it, but just going to shows, listening to music, subject yourself to new music, not getting stuck into those old, your favorite songs from, the songs you grew up with in those 2000s, and be like, like there's so much great music out there. The streaming platforms are so set up to throw in new music at you. Like, if you just can get into an algorithm where you're on Spotify into somebody's playlist that they made, you can open yourself up to a world of great new music, and just perform if you are a performer, and don't ever give up on the music, because it's it's a cherished thing. Absolutely.
It is. Well, I want to thank you for doing this.
No,
I
thanks,
appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man.
I know that we'll always talk and always be
Absolutely.
creatively linked.
That's it. We've had a
the
long
twins.
history together. And
since birth. So
that's it. Yeah, we were born on the exact same day, on the exact same hospital. About, I don't know, a few hours apart, I think it was. Yeah, it was. So we definitely have a cosmic link there.
Yeah.
And that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I appreciate you doing this, Rob. It's great. You're an awesome man for the music scene, and what you're doing here is so valuable. So thanks again, buddy.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next time.